ALC crew, week 3, 2021. Here's what's going on this week. Your work, the Roundhouse chapters 4 and 5, journal number 3, You Gave Me Life, and this week's to-do. So let's get started. First, your work. Last week we examined the question, how does Erdrich illustrate the aftermath of trauma using language and literary devices? Here's what you had to say. Natalie M. wrote, in Chapter 2 of The Roundhouse, Erdrich uses simile and flashback to show the aftermath of Joe's family's trauma. Joe is very surprised at how the milk went sour because it has never happened before. In the text it says, a trance of dread came over me, a taste of death like sour milk. In this quote, Erdrich is comparing sour milk to death. Joe felt very confused about this, so he ran up to his mother to tell her. After going through trauma, the mother may have not paid that much attention to anything else, like the milk, besides what they went through. Also in the text, it states she had never let the milk go sour in the refrigerator before. She had grown up without refrigeration and was proud of how clean she kept her treasured icebox. She took the freshness of its contents seriously. She'd bought Tupperware even, at a party. The milk was sour? Erdrich uses flashback to tell us what has happened in the past, and it helps us to compare to the present day. The flashback told us how the mother never let this happen before, even though she did not have the proper resources to keep the milk good, yet she still did. The mother was also concerned about it and must have forgotten because she is too busy thinking about other things, for example, the trauma that she and her family are going through. J.D. wrote, in Chapter 2 of The Roundhouse, Erdrich uses a flashback and hyperbole to show the aftermath of Joe's family's trauma. As Joe spends time in the house, he realizes how the air seemed hollow in the house, stale, strangely flat. Joe's realization depicts how big of a part Joe's mother plays in his life, that Joe feels something terribly off-putting in the house because of his mother's absence. In order to fully express this, Joe reminisces about the times when his mother was present in the house in the form of a flashback. When Joe drank a glass of sour milk one morning, he immediately runs up to his sleeping mother. After telling her of the spoiled milk, Joe's mother yells in shock, "Sour?" Immediately after, Joe dives into another flashback, where he describes his mother's cleanliness. She had never let the milk go sour in the refrigerator before. She had grown up without refrigeration and was proud of how clean she kept her treasured icebox. She took the freshness of its contents seriously. She'd bought Tupperware even, at a party. Joe's extremely detailed description of his mother's mannerisms concerning cleanliness show how connected he and his mother are, which by default hurts Joe even more after seeing his mom in such pain after the rape incident. Selma B. wrote, in Chapter 2 of The Roundhouse, Erdrich uses flashbacks and symbols to show the aftermath of Joe's family's trauma. As we know, Joe's mother hasn't been active and doing things she normally would do due to the trauma she had just gone through. On page 36, Joe says, my mother and I probably realized at the same time that my father, who had taken care of my grandmother for many years and certainly knew how to cook, had faked his ineptitude. This flashback of Joe telling us that he's sure of his dad being able to cook shows us now that with Geraldine recovering, things aren't the same without her. She's like the glue to the family. They really need her. The way we talked about the meaning of America runs on Duncan, it's the same idea of the family runs on Geraldine. Everyone gets affected when mom isn't at her full potential. This trauma is affecting them, showing that they just want things to be back to the way they were before. Now, as Erdrich moves into the middle chapters of the novel, she's going to show us how Joe's character shifts from a victim of trauma to one of agency. In chapters 4 and 5, we'll see how Joe takes matters into his own hands as he begins to investigate the scene of the crime. He becomes driven, compelled to uncover evidence left behind by his mom's attacker, and items he discovers start to provide some new leads. But through these discoveries, the severity of the attack on his mom dawns on Joe. It becomes apparent that Joe is weary of the police's ability to solve the case. Later, Joe sees a ghost. Father Travis, the reservation priest, becomes a suspect. Meanwhile, Geraldine grapples with the trauma of her attack. Joe becomes even more emboldened to get to the bottom of the case. This compels Joe and his friends to spy on Father Travis, which leads to a confrontation. As you read chapters 4 and 5, use the guiding questions in Canvas under week 3. These will help solidify your understanding of these chapters. And as we read on, we'll notice a dramatic shift in Joe's character. You may say he goes from naive to aware, or from victimhood to agency. So let's use this as a focus for our journal writing this week. Here it is, Journal 3, You Gave Me Life. During chapters 4 and 5, we see a significant change in Joe. What is this change, and how does Erdrich show it through character details and language choices? There are numerous portions of this week's reading that will serve as prime material as you respond to this prompt. But if you'd like a little help, I've identified a passage that you may use for your analysis. The following is a scene in chapter 5 where Joe and his father are talking about how the investigation is going. You said if they're assigned to Indian country, they're either rookies or have trouble with authority. Did I really? Said my father. He nodded, almost smiled. Soren is not a rookie, he said. All right, Dad, so why didn't he find the gas can? I don't know, said my father. I know, because he doesn't care about her. Not really, not like we do. I had worked myself into a fury now, or planted myself into one with every puny hothouse plant that would not succeed in gaining my mother's attention. It seemed that anything my father did or said was calculated to drive me crazy. I was strangling there alone with my father in the quiet late afternoon. A rough cloud had boiled over me. I wanted all of a sudden nothing else but to escape from my father and my mother too, rip away their web of guilt and protection and nameless sickening emotions. I gotta go. A tick started crawling up my leg. I pulled up the cuff of my trousers, caught it, and ripped it savagely apart with my nails. All right, my father said quietly. Where do you want to go? Anywhere. Joe, he said carefully, I should have told you. I am proud of you. I am proud of how you love your mother. Proud of how you figured this out. But do you understand that if something should happen to you, Joe, that your mother and I we couldn't bear it. You give us life. I jumped up. Yellow spots pulsed before my eyes. You gave me life, I said. That's how it's supposed to work, so let me do what I want with it. I ran for my bike, jumped on it, and pedaled right around him. He tried to catch me with his arms, but I swerved at the last moment and put on a burst of speed that put me out of his reach. Remember, as you read this passage or any other passage of your choice, dig into the descriptive details to help explain Joe's shift in character. So what do we have to do? 1. Read chapters 4 and 5 of The Roundhouse. 2. Write journal number 3. And 3. Extra credit. To earn an additional 5 points, you may share your journal entry with our ALC community of learners. If interested, please create and submit a 1-minute recording of you voicing your journal entry. Consider using your mobile device's voice recording app. Submit the audio recording in addition to your written entry via Canvas. Now, by submitting your voice journal, you agree to having it included in a class video that will be shared in one of these class videos with our ALC community of learners. Due to time constraints, some voice journals may not be featured in the class video. So when is this due? That's right, the last day of the school week, Friday, January 22nd by 11:59 p.m. Next week, we'll dive deeper into the story as we examine chapters 6 and 7 of The Roundhouse. That's it for this one, ALC crew. We'll see you in virtual class. In the meantime, stay safe, stay focused, and stay connected.